It's a game from the European Club Cup. It
Hmm.
was a nice game of Pranav, young Indian boy, against Jorden van Foreest.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And it's one of the decisive games for the outcome of this tournament. And the reason I would like to look at this game is because Pranav, he's a young Indian guy, but frankly, I had heard of his name, but I've never really seen any of his games. He is rated 2579.
Hmm.
Jorden
Which
van
is
Vereest is a more established Grandmaster, has won Tata Steel Masters already once. He has been the second of Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen.
yeah.
So the rating gap between these two is it's about 130 rating points. It's not too much. In earlier episodes of the show,
We'll get
we
to that
have
again. Don't worry.
much bigger rating gap. So to be the underdog, I mean, the difference at the top, they are much smaller, of course. And the additional nice effect is it's also a team event.
Hmm.
So Pranav was playing for the team of Magnus Carlsen, Offerspill. And I mean, they play on 6 boards, and Magnus is the favorite on his board. But on all the other boards, Offerspill was the underdog against the Super Chess team from Romania. They had all super grandmasters, Richard Rapport, Vishy Anand. So it promised to be a close match. But this game of 16-year-old Pranav against Jorden van Vereest is the key game. So let's have a look together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, what you just mentioned, Offerspiel was the underdog. Of course, Magnus is the king of the kings in this case, but they were an underdog. They were not supposed to win this event, and they did, after all, right? Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it's very close, and it really helps when you have a leader like Magnus in your team. He is boosting these
Yeah.
young teammates, and I definitely think they benefited from his presence there. So Pranav plays the Spanish opening. We quickly go through the first 10 moves or so because it's well-known theory from this opening. White goes for a setup with a modest move d3, but this has been seen many times. We are not getting a very sharp forcing type of game, but more it starts off with a slow maneuvering. Both sides are getting their pieces out.
They're
So
warming up.
we don't have to go into all the details
Sure.
for this opening line. So here we have a typical position. White has just played its knight to d2 with the idea to come around with a knight to g3, and the knight is looking for opportunities to start attacking on the king side together with the other pieces. And there's another plan as well. Let's try to prepare the central advance of the d pawn. And I think both players had prepared for it because just a few weeks prior to this game, Pranav had exactly this position in a game against Armenian Grandmaster Sargsyan. In that game, the move d5 was played, but Jorden decides to play the move knight e7, which is also a typical idea. White plays the move d4, and the knight comes to g6. So the knight is better placed on g6. It supports the pawn on e5, and white is going to do the same. Knight f1 with the idea to get a knight to g3. And here, small surprise, as Jorden played here the move queen b8. It's not really bad. It's just a novelty. In most of these Spanish structures, black wants to play the move c5. But then white also has the option to make it a closed game with d5, and it's not bad for black, but it's a bit more pleasant for white, I would say, with a nice space advantage.
And obviously, black, with the rating advantage, just wants to win this thing, I guess, right? I mean, it is a team event after all, but you still are looking for making the game a little bit different than usual variations. Am I right? Or
Absolutely, and it's, I would say, very typical for Jorden. He can play a solid line, but then he'll give his own interpretation to it because he has a creative style with lots of unusual ideas. Maybe not the first engine line, but maybe move number 5 or 6 can also be interesting. And these kind of maneuvering games, they are very interesting for his style too. Let's see. So queen b8, knight g3, bishop goes to c6. bishop d2, and now the queen goes to b7. So now black's idea has been revealed as the pieces are about to attack the pawn on e4. If black is allowed to take on d4, this pawn on e4 will be attacked 4 times. It's only 3 times defended by bishop, rook, and knight. And that explains White's decision here to play the move queen b1, overprotecting the pawn on e4. Bishop d7 back was played because apparently black's strategy didn't work out as he hoped for, but also at some point black is looking for a way to advance the c pawn. Let's have a look. b4 was played. White is grabbing more space on the queen side as well, and now the first capture of the game on move 19. B takes a4 may look a little strange because it's a weakening. It's a weakening of the pawn structure on the queen side, as this pawn on a6 becomes more vulnerable. But having exchanged the light squared bishops, there are plans even to try to gain control over the c4 square with your knight, or maybe even with the support of the queen. And I think a move like knight d7 here would have been quite solid for
yeah, it looks like a very far path to walk to, but of course you're attacking the rook, and then you're already there. So it's just more or less 1 to 2 moves.
Exactly.
Total,
you're getting a tempo, and black is very solid. There are no immediate threats, no clear targets for the white pieces. But I would say this is also typical for Jorden. He's an active player, so he opens up the position here with the move d5 instead. But after e takes d5, now we have an open game. All the strategical aspects, I mean, they are still relevant, but it's no longer the maneuvering phase of the game. It's getting wild. And black has to decide what to do. Recapture the pawn on d5 or take on d4. Well, the idea is that if you take the pawn on d4, white is not going to recapture, but advance the pawn to c4. And this is a nice pawn block. Yeah. And this pawn on d4 will be taken next. So that's not a good option. The possibility to take with the queen runs into the move rook a5, gaining a tempo by hitting the queen, and you're attacking the pawn on e5 as well. So that pawn will be gone, and things are looking just great for white. So the only move is knight takes d5. But then white just captures the pawn on e5, and the pawn cannot be recaptured because it's well supported by the rook and the knight. I think it was not a pawn blunder by Jorden. He probably expected to get some nice piece play. So he goes for the move queen c6, attacking the rook, attacking the pawn on c3 as well. And the move queen b3 was played, protecting both the rook and the pawn. Very understandable. Knight b6, attacking the rook one more time. And here the rook got to go back. It went to a2, probably already anticipating the bishop on d2 in case the knight is coming to c4. I would say that more natural is to go back to a1 to connect both the rooks. But with rook a2, white has an other idea in mind. Let's have a look. Knight c4 was played, and now knight comes to d4. Now we see that the rook is really needed to protect that bishop, and white is attacking the queen. The queen also got to retain control over the knight, so the queen has to go to d5, and Pranav wants to protect the pawn on e5 with the move f4. So he's a pawn up, but he's opening up its own king's position, and that's getting interesting. But you see that he is not afraid. He tries to play in a principled way, stick to the material. Black also has to prove that there is sufficient compensation.
So at the moment, I will find out in a short moment probably why, but it looks as if white is just losing a pawn, but there must be something deeper, of course.
Which pawn do you mean?
Isn't it f4? If oh yeah,
it's defended by the bishop. Good morning.
Oh,
Yeah, so and of course the knight on c4 cannot take the bishop first because the queen will be hanging on
yeah,
d5.
that
And
wouldn't be so good. No.
that explains the move played by Jorden. He went for the move rook 88 to overprotect the queen, and then you're planning to take on d2, followed by taking on f4. But it's not a good move. I can quickly show you what black should have played here. It's the move a5, getting rid of that vulnerable pawn. And it's getting sharp. You can even take with the rook now. This is a funny move because knight takes is not possible because the queen is hanging.
Yeah, who wouldn't see that?
Well, probably a lot of people would miss that for sure. Yeah. But and this is the difficult part. This is probably the reason Jorden didn't go for it. Black is now 2 pawns down, but very aggressive move. C5 will offer Black fantastic piece play as the bishop can come to C5 next. Complicated line. Engines are showing it, so it's easy for us to see. But to find it over the board, it's a different story. Let's get back to the game. Rook 88 was played, and now very nice move by white. Bishop back to c1. This is the coordination white had been aiming for. So the bishop, it's back on its original square, but the rook from a2 can be connected very soon with the other rook again. White is a pawn up. Pawn on a6 seems vulnerable as well. White seems to be in good shape. Bishop takes b4.
Oops.
You probably also didn't see that one coming.
No, not at all.
If you take with the queen, there is the move c5, and black regains the piece.
Oh.
Instead, there followed c takes b4. And after queen takes d4, black has regained the piece as well. Material is even number of pawns, but these pawns are still split. And after solving the check, king h2, looks like white is doing fine, because one of the ideas is not to play rook d2, but to put a rook on c2 to attack the knight and try to win the pawn on c7 or even the pawn on a6. So there are some coordination issues. Knight goes back to b6, so at least the knight is stable, but there are some clear drawbacks as white opens up the king side with the move e6. That's a beautiful move.
Very
as you
nice
see,
indeed,
the black king will come in the fire line. If you take with the f pawn, it's rook takes e6 with some devastating threats, and later on the f pawn can be pushed as well to attack the knight, to open up the king side by removing that pawn from g7. Easy attacking play without sacrificing material. So
wild
that's
game.
not. Yeah, well, and it's getting even more interesting.
Okay.
This is just a start. We are just on move 31, so stay tuned. After e6, queen d5 was played. Very understandable. You would like to exchange queens as black and gain control over this diagonal. If the queen goes away, the rook on a2 is potentially hanging. So queen doesn't have many squares, but it goes to b1. Very nice, subtle idea. With the point that rook takes e6 runs into rook takes. And if you take with the queen, there is this move f5. So you're winning a piece. That is the trick. So you cannot take that pawn. In the game, there followed queen d3. Once again, black is aiming for the exchange of queens. And look what white plays now. He just places the queen in the corner. And it feels like this is a concession, like you're making a step in the wrong direction. But these pieces, they can work from distance.
My goodness, this looks so crazy. I mean, especially how many people would not just like take on f7 to try to make everything a bit calmer, exchange all the things which are hanging around, and
this is very important strategy for all of you. It's once you're having the initiative, it's better to maintain the tension, not to release it. And
yeah, I heard that once or twice.
one of the ideas here is that if you would eliminate that pawn from e6, then it's knight h5 with crushing mating threat on g7. and you can't block with f6 because then the rook
Yeah.
is hanging. So there are some hidden tactics. If you just click through the moves, you don't see them. But when you go deeper into the game, and that's what we will see more in the coming phase.
Yeah, and
Black
for you at
decide-
home, of course, quickly just to note, you can always check this game, which Robert analyzed in the chess-based news site. Everything is there. You can just click around from your mobile, from your PC, and recapitulate, put in your own thoughts and all of this. Sorry, so let's keep on.
No. It's important to mention it. And after f takes e6, which is the game continuation, the move Rook d2 was played. So the queen is under threat. Queen goes back to b5. One pair of rooks was exchanged, and I would say this is a very interesting moment. As let me ask you, Arne, and viewers, what do you think? How would you proceed here with white? And maybe it's just simpler than you originally think. Just I give you maximum 10 seconds, Arne, and then I would like to hear from you.
Well, obviously, I immediately see the rook could take on e6, and it looks reasonable, but there must be something better. So I would say, how about let's get the queen to c3 to get it on a better position.
Not a bad move.
No?
Your idea is to set up a battery with bishop and queen, right? To generate some mating threats. I like the idea.
Okay,
and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. However, sometimes just keep it simple. Rook takes e6 was not played in the game, but it's the best move. And you're attacking the rook. It's just that in the game you would have played this move. I'm pretty sure, Arne. It's just that
if I would have 10 seconds left, yeah, no doubt.
Exactly. It's just that I ask you, and you feel like subconsciously there should be something better. Probably black would go for rook d6 to offer the exchange of rooks to protect the knight indirectly. And after take on d6 and now centralize the queen, you have basically the same idea as you showed me, as you would like to put a bishop on b2, you're threatening checkmate, there's a weak pawn on d6, everything is well protected. I don't think black is having a very enjoyable time here in this endgame with queens still on the board. It's still quite tactical.
It's really difficult to defend this, actually. I mean, there are options, but it's very unpleasant, it looks like.
Yeah, now back to the game, because rook takes e6 was not played, but I think the move played by Pranav, it really shows his ambitious playing style. As instead of taking the pawn, he played here the move f5. And you may think, well, that
I'm seeing some
just
things
been covered. He's looking for tactical opportunities. Yeah. And the idea behind this pawn sacrifice is to close the fifth rank so that later on the knight can come to h5 without the queen allowing to cover that square. E takes f5 was played. I already revealed one idea of White's previous move, but look at what he played now. Bishop takes h6.
Beautiful, yeah. That's what I truly saw that like a couple of moves ago now. That looks very, very tempting.
I will show you that the piece cannot be taken. The bishop is poisoned. If you do that, the knight comes into to h5, threatening checkmate. Look at the queen, look at the rook. They are ready to strike any moment. If you protect the square, then the queen can come in to f6, attacking the knight, and you're running out of useful moves. Let's say you go knight f8
or something. Yeah, wow.
And rook e8 was about to be played there as well. If you go rook e8 here, which looks decisive, there is still queen takes b4. Which is a little bit annoying. So a better move is to eliminate this defender. You can go here for the move rook e7.
Oh, okay.
So that the mating threat on g7 will be renewed. And after trading of the rooks, you'll have queen g7 or even the knight coming to f6. Your piece down, mate cannot be avoided because these pieces on the queen side, they're too far away. Interesting line, right? And it's nice. I think this shows really the tactical skills from Pranav. and it's something he had been calculating from afar. I'm pretty sure about it. Bishop takes h6. You're threatening mate. Bishop cannot be taken. Rook d7. It's the only move. Was found by Jorden. Now you would think, okay, let's move the bishop again. The bishop is safe. No way. Knight h5. Getting another piece involved. And, well, if you go g takes h6, we have queen f6 again. And I think it's just exactly the same position as we have seen in the other line. So still, the bishop cannot be taken. There's not a mating threat, but obviously it's not very pleasant to have these three pieces targeting your g7 pawn. Queen takes b4. Black captures the pawn. So does white. White gets the bishop on this diagonal. And there are even some ideas to go knight f6 anytime to give a check, forking the king and rook.
Yeah.
Queen goes back in defense with a check. King back to h1. And now Jorden finds the only moves as he comes in with a knight to d5 to prevent that knight from coming to f6. Here we see that the bishop is actually, I mean, it has nicely won a pawn, but it's not ideally placed. If I were white, I would just move the bishop away. And for a long time, this bishop is going to enjoy the position. And the only thing you have to do is get a white queen somewhere. Maybe on h6, somewhere in black's position. I think that's what you have to do. But Pranav played here the move bishop to e5. It's a tempo. It's a forcing line. You attack the queen, but in such open position, I think it would have made more sense to keep the bishop on the board. Knight takes e5. Rook takes e5. Still, it looks dangerous, but black is relieved to have exchanged at least one. Pair of minor pieces again. And pawn on f5 is under threat. Rook e8 is always an idea to reckon with. And Jorden may have considered knight e7. It's a passive move, but it holds the position together still, probably. And, well, in the game there followed knight c3. That's also another remarkable counter shot.
What?
You're interfering on the diagonal, so queen takes e5 is the idea. And the point is that after queen takes c3, black regains the piece with a double attack, winning the knight back on h5.
And so, protecting e8 too, my goodness.
A lot of pieces are off the board, but still it's very, very tactical. And there are a lot of options, and it's not about material, it's about the king safety. And if you just compare the white king with the black king, it's clear that white has the advantage. And I think white should go for a move like queen c6 to attack the rook, to attack the pawn. There are possibilities to infiltrate somehow. I think the chances of winning the game with white with queens on the board, they are much higher than queens off the board. And the move played in the game, it's very ambitious. It's the move g4. Pawn on f5 is
so many tactics. The Pranav.
Yeah, you think that with every exchange it will become quieter, but it's in fact the opposite. It's still a razor sharp endgame. Queen h6 played with the idea that white can take the pawn, but black can finally go for this exchange of queens. So this is a rook endgame, which is better for white. These connected pawns, they are more dangerous than the separated pawns on the queen side. King g3, the king is active, and black goes back with a rook to d8. It's one of the many possible moves, but the idea is that after rook a5, you can get behind your pawn. The pawn is stopped at the moment. White goes king f4, and black doesn't have many options. White is about just to advance its pawns, and that looks quite dangerous for black. So Jordan's idea here was to give up the c pawn. If you take it, then the a pawn is going to run, and the a pawn is really far away. You can block with your rook, then the king needs to come over. But once the king is somewhere on the other side, black will get counterplay against white's pawns. And therefore Pranav, he's not going to settle for a draw. He plays the move king e4. And the idea is that you're approaching the pawns with your king, and you would like to win this pawn. After rook h8, the rook goes back to a3, not allowing black to take the pawn on h3. Rook c8 on the board to protect this pawn. Rook takes a6.
Oh.
And now c4. And the rook needs to come back immediately, and it goes to a2. This is very precise, because after c3, the rook comes to c2. Blocking the pawn, king g6, king d4. And you understand that rook takes c3 is going to be played. And you always protect the pawn on h3 at the same time.
So that's it?
You would think that. Let's have a look. Rook d8 check. Rook d8. And now, well, if you want to make progress, you need to get rid of the pawn. So king takes c3. Now it's rook h8.
Yeah.
You're attacking the pawn.
This is so instructive. So if you want to pause at home, do that and analyze for yourself. I mean,
it's still very rich. And rook h2, king g5. So the king is blocking the pawns. It's not easy at all to get them forward. King d4, rook h7, king e4. And this is the crucial moment of this endgame, as objectively, this is a draw. White should not be able to win it despite being 2 pawns up. I will show you the main idea. If you just go away with a rook to be able to give checks from the side, how are you going to make any progress?
You can't.
Yeah, one idea is that if you go rook d2 to stop the checks from the side, the rook goes back to attack the pawn again. If you go back to h3, there's no progress. If you go to d3, protecting the pawn from the side, now you're going to make waiting moves. And white, in order to make progress, need to get its king here to support a pawn. But that's not possible because you cannot cross the third rank. If you give a check on d5, I will go back to g6 and the pawn on h3 is hanging again. So that is a very instructive way to save the game.
Goodness.
Now Jorden played very careless in this endgame. Play the move rook h8, and there is king f3 with the idea to go king g3 and advance the pawn.
Yep.
If the rook goes away now, then h4 can be played immediately. King h4 was played. Probably he felt that this should be good for good in the sense that good enough to make a draw.
Looks
but
like.
rook e2, white is giving up the pawn from h3, and it was not taken because if you do so, there is rook e5 threatening to give a check on h5. If black gives a check on f8, you can always block on f5. So,
but king cannot go to h4. No, yeah.
Good question. Yeah, then king f4, and
okay.
And
now it's Zugzwang almost.
You cannot get back with your king if you give a check. You block with your rook. If the rook goes away, it's even checkmate. So you got to go back. And I'm going to play rook f7. I'll control the f file, preventing a check. And step by step, I'm coming forward with the king and pawn.
Oh, that is so nasty.
So black's king and rook, they're very unfortunate on at the side of the board. The pawn on h3 cannot be taken. Rook f8 was played right away, but now the king is supporting the pawn rook a8, rook e7, activating the rook, intending to give a check and untangle. Black gives a check, king f3. Of course, if you take the pawn now, it's checkmate on h7. Don't do that. Rook a3, king f4, rook a4, king f5, rook a5. You just walk out of the checks. You can take the pawn on h3 now, but then the g pawn will be out of reach. Rook a6 check. You just block it. The checks are over. Rook a5. And now king g6. The king is coming over with the idea that if you take the pawn on h3, g5 is there. If you go king g4 to attack the pawn, it's rook e4. And the king has to give up the protection. And very soon, the g pawn will come forward.
Oh, yeah.
In the game, we are almost there. Rook a3 played. King, g5. And now, okay, this is a funny last moment of the game.
Okay.
But top Grandmaster is not going to fall for it. Rook e3 played. Yeah. Taking a rook is stalemate. So the rook goes away. Jorden tries it again. Rook f3. Please take me. But white can just play here the move king h6.
Nice.
And well, the g pawn is about to come forward. Rook takes h3, g6, and Pranav saved this match for Offerspill to secure a 3-3. And in the final round, the Norwegian squad went on to win. Also, thanks to a beautiful victory of Pranav with the black pieces.
I think
against very strong Grandmaster Oparin, also almost 2700 rated. So he was definitely the man of the Norwegian team in the final two rounds. Two decisive victories for him.
Yeah, true underdog, absolutely. And even Magnus twittered, or should I say axed, that some text about Pranav, some cryptical message, but of course it was about how strong Pranav played in this tournament. So yeah, this might be the last time that Pranav is an underdog.
It's a new kid on the block, yeah? Maybe it's the next Indian top superstar reaching 2700. So
it looks
we
as
discovered
if,
them here.
It looks as if, this is the Overdog should be the next episode when we ever, or he will play against some weaker player, right, with 2,500 or 2,600, while he has 2,700 or even more. We will see.
That could be interesting. In a few years, he's the Overdog himself.
Thank you, Robert. This was really a fascinating game. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We will see each other soon enough. Until then,
bye-bye.